Hello, and welcome to another episode of Blue Marble Podcast, and also another installment of Green Faith Circle here at Circle Sanctuary. I'm your host, Rev Charbert. Thanks for tuning in. Here we share personal stories about love and faith in action for our planet and lively discussions about climate justice issues and things we can do to help. And our purpose is to educate and to motivate. This time, our featured guest is Nan Foster. She's a colleague of mine and a friend who is going to be sharing her journey so far in catalyzing a climate action ministry in her home congregation. Nan is a Unitarian Universalist. She joined the UU Church of the Monterey Bay Peninsula in 2022, and she became active in their Environmental Justice Committee. You're going to hear more about that. In 2015, she became a climate reality leader, trained by former Vice President and Nobel laureate Al Gore, and since then, she's been active in climate advocacy as well. Professionally, Nan is a math teacher in a charter school for adults who did not finish high school. And she loves walking in nature, watching birds and other animals, and singing in her church's choir. I've personally watched Nan set the stage for climate activism in her UU congregation, and I wanted her to be able to share about this with others of us who are also involved with Green Faith Circle and who are involved with our own home communities, our own home congregations, circles, groves, covens, who want to be able to help people engage in climate activism and justice. Welcome, Nan, and welcome to other members who are here with us. I want to invite everybody other than Nan for a moment to go ahead and introduce yourself, if you'd kindly say your name and where you're hailing in from tonight. Reverend Judith.
Hi, I'm Reverend Judith. I'm calling in from Chicago, Illinois, and I've been a member of Circle Sanctuary for well over a dozen years now, and I'm honored to be serving.
Thank you. Reverend Selena.
Hi, I'm Reverend Selena Fox, and I'm a senior minister and founder of Circle Sanctuary, and I'm coming to you tonight from the home where Dennis and I live, which is on land that adjoins Circle Sanctuary Nature Preserve. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you. And Reverend Dennis.
Hi, I'm Dennis Carpenter, and I'm also coming into you tonight from Oak Haven, next to Circle Sanctuary in southwestern Wisconsin, where we've gotten about 8 to 9 inches of snow today, and it's lovely outside.
Glad you could be with us. And if Selena and Dennis both disappear, it's because they're dealing with blizzard conditions. So we're happy that you're with us for now, for as long as you can be. Jessica?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica LeClaire. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, which is also in the snowstorm and located on the ancestral lands of the Ho-Chunk Nation.
Thank you. And we've got George and Jennifer. Hey, folks.
Hello, I'm George Whitney from Madison, Wisconsin.
I'm Jennifer Reed.
Also. And again, Charlotte Bear here in the Monterey Bay, which is the traditional lands of the Ohlone peoples and the Amamutsan tribal band in California's Central Coast. Nan, I'm so glad that you agreed to do this. And I just was really wondering, while we get started, tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, you mentioned loving to be in nature. So I don't know, maybe start by saying, what is it about nature connection that matters to you, that is sacred to you?
Yeah, when you gave me this question to reflect on before, and it sort of took me aback because it's such a strong draw that I feel to wanting to whether it's watching birds or the beautiful marine mammals that we have here, or just the trees, it feels so automatic in a way, and I realize it's actually similar to the draw to connecting with humans, or pets. It's just so soothing and pleasing, and also though it's also informed by my larger understanding of our planet and the ecosystems that exist and the entire way that it's connected, and that our being evolved out of all these like natural processes and systems. So I'm informed by that science and that knowledge that it's so deeply important for us. And I found that just it happened that I wanted to like focus on birds and wildlife more the more I got involved in climate activism. I didn't plan it that way, but I think it made me want to cherish it all more.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. Well, within that, then what made you decide to become a Unitarian Universalist in particular?
Well, partly it was my best friend Sally, when I was 7, was going to Unitarian Sunday school and brought me along. But I didn't really stay with the UUs. My family was, my father was an atheist, and my mother, while was away from her, kind of had moved away from her religious Christian upbringing at that time in her life. So I had no real religious background. And then I went to a Quaker high school, which was really meaningful for me and still informs my spirituality a great deal. I attended a UU church in San Francisco for a while in the 90s when I wanted to take my son to Sunday school to give him a little religious, experience. But I didn't really find that as a true home for me, that one in San Francisco. At the time, it was, yeah, I did. And then, so I wasn't really into any church for a long time, but more spiritually involved through my meditation and yoga, some Buddhist practice that my yoga teacher taught mainly, and other experiences here and there. And sort of, I think I've like many of us, there's a lot of people that identify as spiritual, not religious. And I think that that was what I did, would have picked until I just joined this church. Because I bring a lot of things together. I actually was a religion major in college, which, I was already meditating and doing yoga and had the Quaker background. So even though you study it at the college I was at in a secular way, it was resonating to my experience. So I brought a lot of things together for myself over time. And then I moved to Monterey 2 years ago, and I immediately was fortunate to get a circle of friends through my neighbors. However, I had an experience with one friend who was making jokes about people with a different accent. And I just felt really, I liked this friend, and I liked but I felt that I needed to find some people who wouldn't be doing that, and who I could talk over my reaction to that and like process what should I do about this. And so I had a kind of a desire to find a community, and the Unitarians on a Facebook group announced that they were going to have a karaoke party. So I said, I love singing, and I went. That's how I actually got there. Went to a karaoke party and sang there, and they immediately invited me to join the choir, come to church, and they were just this church, they're just the most welcoming and friendly bunch of people. And so I did find my spiritual home there at that point. That was about a year ago.
Thanks for sharing some of that spiritual journey with us. I know, a lot of us increasingly in America are spiritual, but not religious, or what we call interreligious. And also part of your background and the choices you've made is in deciding to become an educator. What brought that about?
Yeah, I didn't know. I was one of those people who graduated from college with a degree in religion, not sure what to do. So it took me a long time to find my way. And I actually I lived in a communal situation where we did have classes that were about more like communication and relationships and things like that. And I was somewhat involved in teaching that. But I didn't know where really what my path was, so I actually did like work on it, workshops, and to explore what should I do, aptitude testing, and I realized through that I was that I have a they called it humanitarian orientation, right? That I wasn't. I mean, I knew that, but it was like nice to have a label that no, this is why working in business or being a salesperson never interested me, you know. And then I reflected and realized I'd been involved with schools, with some kind of, everything had been some form of education my whole life. I had volunteered in my son's schools, preschools, everything. And then I happened to, although I was exploring other ideas, I thought I might be a nutritionist. But when I went back to college, took the first math class, I just fell in love with the math, actually, with doing math, and had a urge to help other people with it. So gradually I put together, going to school for it, as earning my master's of education. And now the cool thing is that the work I'm doing, we're actually exploring a whole liberatory education framework in our school that is really deep work about decolonializing our education and really recognizing all the way that this education systems are oppressive to people. And so it's my work as an educator has actually gotten even more connected to social justice. So I'm excited about that.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, then how did you get involved with climate activism in particular? I mean, you even went on to become a climate reality leader, which isn't better than other forms of climate activism, but it does indicate a significant commitment. So how did you get involved with that?
Honestly, it was the film An Inconvenient Truth, that when I saw it, when did it come out? 2004, 2005, somewhere in there, I think. I just took it to heart. I was also in college an activist with nuclear weapons, early 80s. I'm sure many of you were involved in those struggles. At that time I had envisioned, apocalypse from nuclear weapons, and so when I think when I saw Al Gore's film, it was like I always knew that there were going to be ecological consequences coming in my lifetime. And it just seemed so important, again, like the activism I had done when I was younger. But I didn't get, I did things on my own. I got solar power for my house, and on my own, I called my supervisor in San Francisco to ask for, legislation related to solar power and things like that. And various things like that I did as an individual. And 2015, I'm not sure I can't recall now why at that time, but at that time I applied to be a climate reality leader so that I could really focus more on it and get more training and connect with others about it. I actually went to a training in Toronto, which was really interesting to meet Canadians, so many Canadians in the training.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you. That's a bit of your backstory there. And here you are now at the Unitarian Church in Monterey. And it seems like you jumped right in beyond karaoke. You decided that you wanted to bring some of this, or not bring some of it, but maybe boost or augment some of the environmental justice work and introduce climate action as well. So help us understand now, how did you get going? I know there's a whole process there.
Yeah, so it's partly how I approached joining that church. Well, I didn't even join right away. I let myself come in and feel it out, and I knew I was in the choir. I loved singing. That part was right away. But the rest of it, all the committees and all the different things, people came up to me immediately, like, could you join our committee? Could you this or that? And I said, no, thank you. I want to really take my time and feel what is right for me and really understand what you're all about here and what all is available while I was attending services and participating in the choir. And so I kept myself open. And then it was Earth Day service, the Sunday after Earth Day. And one of the worship associates, I don't recall exactly what she said, but she was talking about the need to take care of the planet, to solve these crises. And I got super excited because I had just been in another training with Climate Reality about the Inflation Reduction Act and the infrastructure bill and all the opportunities that are in those bills. And the feeling I had, it actually reminds me of the Quaker training that I have, where in Quaker worship, you're moved to speak, you feel the spirit moving in you. I wanted to almost just interrupt the service, like, hey, wait, no, but I controlled myself because I didn't think anybody would appreciate that. So I waited until the end and rushed up to her and told her, I have this training I've just been in. I wanted to present about this. How can we do this? And she was lovely. I think she was already a member of the Environmental Justice Committee, and invited me to come to their meetings and to do some planning at that point. Yeah.
And it went from there. I mean, you worked on a big presentation, right?
Yeah. So the way that happened, and I had noticed, like, I'd been involved for a few months at that point, and it didn't seem as if there were a lot of actions happening, and I wanted, I was sort of like, well, you have a committee, what is it doing? And I'm not quite sure why they were kind of quiet at that time. My theory is that they just have so many other things. The people that are on the committee have lots of other roles in the church and other things they're focusing on. Anyway, so we decided, I consulted with the people who were in the church about when to do it. And they said, summer's slow, July, August, everything kind of shuts down. Let's plan it for September. And I thought, of course, doing it on the equinox would make sense, would be lovely. So there was actually a Saturday, like the Saturday was the actual equinox. So we we put it on the calendar, picked a time, and so then it was a matter of, as that time got closer, trying to figure out what exactly was I going to do for this. And I reflected a lot about the material that's in the slideshow. So much of the material in the slideshows that we get from Al Gore's organization, from Climate Reality, often have majority about what's the problems and the terrible costs we already have and that we anticipate. And I know that can be, it's important for people to know, but I know it can be painful and it can be actually discouraging, right? I'm sure you all have thought about all these things quite a bit. So I came up with the title, and balancing the light and dark, because that's what I was trying to do as I was preparing it, is to balance that. And then it was a matter of sort of getting to know this committee of people that are already, there already was a committee, there was already a whole church organization to learn about. And I did feel a lot of anxiety, and that I was planning it on my own. And so that's why I reached out to you, for example, to discuss, to get your thoughts and process with you about what I might do. And I also reached out at one point to the minister of our church to just talk to her, one of the two co-ministers, to talk to her about, I guess I was partly like not sure what was right to do, what was appropriate, and was I on the right track for what would be right in this church. And I was so new and green that I didn't know how to do a lot of things. Like I thought once we had put it on the calendar, it would be announced everywhere and everything, but that wasn't true. There's other steps you have to do. There's like you have to email so and so and put it in this announcement, and email somebody else and do this. And so I needed support with all of that. And I think after I talked to the minister, I'm guessing she probably told the rest of the people that I needed more support. And then they kind of came together and started telling me like, oh, there's this woman who will make flyers for you as a volunteer, and they're so and so likes to do social media, and so we'll put up flyers. And so we just sort of planned it like that.
Yeah, and to interrupt you, because we'll come back to that, but what I'm hearing is, even as a relative newcomer, you found a home in this committee. You worked the relationships with this committee, and you decided to sort of break ground with a presentation to the church or to the local congregation. And it involved a lot of cross-pollinating and sort of asking people to help with this task and this task and this task. And in doing that, kind of finding your team, like your project team, that you can't do it by yourself. Yeah.
Yes, and thank you. You made me think about what else I want to say. Thank you. Which is that what I was aware of was didn't seem to be a lot of conversation going on in this congregation about climate change and about environmental justice. And so my goal that I had in mind was to increase the conversation, to have more conversation happening. So that made it easier for me to deal with my fears and anxieties, because didn't mean it had to come out exactly a certain way or look exactly a certain way, but that even just preparing for it, we were having more conversations, and I was getting people involved in planning, and so and that I knew that whatever happened, even my presentation wasn't perfect or as smooth as I wanted it to be, as long as we were having conversations and we're thinking about it together, we're coming together, then that was what was most important.
So that took some of the performance pressure off of any kind of goal or expectation. It's just a focus on having conversations. And I know we'll do crosstalk in a bit, but Dennis Carpenter's always talked about that, keeping the conversation going, even getting it going. Yeah.
Yeah. I was really I was very nervous. It came at a time too, like 3 weeks before the presentation, I got COVID. I was also at that time applying for this new position in my school. It was a lot going on with me, so I had to, calm myself. And there was a quote that I saw from I forgot her name now, but the quote was less prep, more presence. Right? I mean, preparation is great. But I was telling myself to be present during, and there were things that came up, right? Like I had technology issues during the presentation, as I recall. So, but so that helped me to stay calm, and I just wanted to be present and recognize that whatever was happening was a good thing.
And I know too, just for our audiences here and other Green Faith members, when she says presentation, she's actually talking about putting together like a 4 to 6 hour event. So I just want y'all to hear that. and you also reached beyond the congregation to other activist colleagues you have, and a bunch of people came in from out there and offered help as well. So
that's right. Thank you.
Yeah,
I mean, that's what I tried to just keep telling myself. It's good to get other people in, and I recognize that it's exactly the right thing to get other people involved. That not only am I getting help, but that's what we want, is for people to be activists, to be in action. So that asking for help and getting support is a really good thing. To let people, however it is right for them to contribute. So that was lovely that we had the community that you organized of the Monterey climate activists, Monterey Climate Reality Project people. And yes, I absolutely reached out to them as well by email, and several people supported in different ways as well. So it was lovely how it all came together. And you spoke very lovely, said, very helpful, lovely words that I appreciate a lot.
doing my part. But what I love about your sharing of this is that a lot of people, myself included, can find it a barrier thinking about, if I had to be front and center, it puts me on the spot. How am I going to do it? And what I love about your sharing is, no, you don't. You just have to work on getting the conversation going and get people engaged in conversation, and it will shape up. It will take its shape, and it will do, like you say, it'll magnify that. So yay. Now, what what are you folks working on now? I mean, what's going on now with where you're at? Because I know you just started in September last year.
Yeah, so I had that event on September 21st. And so what happened was we discussed it in the next environmental justice committee meeting, and after that one, and what we decided to do was to start meeting monthly for climate. Actually, the environmental justice committee sort of stopped having these committee meetings and just started having this environmental justice action committee meeting is basically what happened. So instead of a meeting where we spent
Cool.
20 minutes talking about what article we're going to have in the newsletter and what vegetarian recipe we're going to publish, which is really good that we're doing that. It became, this is the focus, is we're doing our Sunday meetings. And that was partly because we got more people involved and they couldn't all meet at the same times that they had, and anyway, so yeah, the second Sunday of every month we decided is when we are gathering. And yeah, so that's what we started. We started the first one in November. We had another one in December, and we're planning another one for this Sunday. And that's been a learning process for me to have these meetings. I think, again, I had technology issues again in the first one. I don't know why my laptop is not connecting well with the church, but it's not. And we went on a little too long. So I got feedback from people, we should have food at these meetings. So then the December meeting, I made a pot of soup to bring. And, but then it was awkward because, well, we have this food and we need the dishes and everything. We just ended up meeting in the kitchen around this big steel counter. And that ended up being awkward because because of that situation, I think it was less focused, and there was more separate conversations. And I also, unfortunately, I put soy sauce in the soup that I was trying to have be gluten-free. And, it was just, I don't know. So we're literally just I'm still figuring out how to have the most effective meetings. I just, an hour ago or two, just talked with the chair of the Environmental Justice Committee planning the meeting we're having on this Sunday. And we decided maybe not as complicated food, simpler food that we could just eat in the sanctuary. She thinks that if we're all seated and focused like that, she doesn't think there'll be all the crosstalk and talking over each other. But the big thing, of course, which I think you were going to lead into, but I might as well segue to it, is the green. We're focusing on the Green Sanctuary 2030 program that the Unitarian Universalist Church
Yeah,
has.
tell us about that, because that's not just for UU congregations, right?
I mean, it is structured for UUs, but the information is all available publicly. So it's, anybody could look at what they have available, and I'm sure they won't mind sharing it and other people using it as a template or collaborating. But what it is specifically is a structure for Unitarian Universalist churches and fellowships to structure their work on climate and environmental justice. And it's rather involved. It has a lot of elements to it. If anybody has heard about Green Sanctuary in the past, I heard that there was another version in the UU church in past years that was very complicated and hard to fulfill. That's what I heard. And that might have been part of the reason why the church wasn't that active at this point. Maybe they had looked at that and said, this is too hard. and didn't go forward with it. So the Green Sanctuary 2030 is a simpler process where there are these different steps you can take, and you don't have to do a whole, you report as you do them. And the first step is, for example, a inventory of what your church is doing so far, has done. It's asking people to focus on can I share a screen, Charlotte?
Yeah.
I could actually share my screen.
Yeah, well, and I'm reading too. People can go to uua.org and look up Green Sanctuary 2030 program while you're
Yeah.
figuring out how to do that if you can.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you for yeah.
Uh-huh.
So the Green Sanctuary 2030 has, let me move my windows around here. They have 4 elements. Can you all see this? Those of you that are with me. Congregational transformation, justice, mitigation, adaptation, and resilience. And the mitigation, they mean like climate action, like trying to prevent climate change when they say mitigation, which can often mean something else in others. I think there are other definitions of that. So they say you can approach the elements all at once, one at a time, or in groupings, dependent on your capacity, strengths, areas for improvement, and interest. And when they talk about justice, they are really talking about connecting with frontline communities and finding out their needs and following their lead. And that it can be, really, they're really connecting it to all justice actions that people might need. They're all connected. And so it might not be directly always specifically something we'd put on a normal list of climate actions, but if it might be housing, for example, is one example. And the congregational transformation piece is really interesting because I could stop sharing now again, but I saw a presentation about that. It's about the idea that you try moving away from having one committee that does all the action.
Yes.
To that it's something that you would weave through your entire congregation and all the committees. And I'm still learning how you do that exactly, to be honest. But the example was Ann Arbor, Michigan. They did it very successfully. However, one of the things that helped them is that their congregation had all agreed that climate change was an important focus for them. So they sort of had their buy-in that way. But the idea is that every aspect of the church's lives is somehow connected to this process, and that you would, like, for example, if you have we have an arts committee, I'm sure there's some way that they could be involved, right? Or the cool thing, I was just at another strategic planning meeting at our church, and people were talking, somebody said they wanted our youth to be involved with climate justice, and then they're like, who wants to do what? And I'm like, I'll work on that, please. Yeah, you can imagine, like, I even would love to get our choir to do something specific on this, or maybe we could sing to cheer ourselves up while we're meeting to talk about some difficult aspects of it. So anyway,
it's kind of it sounds to me, it's sort of like if everyone in the congregation is agreeing that this is a core value, a not negotiable core value, this is something we care about, then it's kind of like, how does it become a core behavior in every part of church life? That's another way of thinking about it in my language. Would you agree with that?
Well, I don't think we have to get everyone to say this is the most, that they agree that this is a priority, because otherwise I think that's a barrier to moving forward if we wait because, for example, in our strategic planning process that we just had, that was not identified as the highest priority of our church. But I'm not going to let that slow us or anything, because I think the question wasn't I think what it is if you asked everybody if you think about your concerns for the future, what's highest on your list? I imagine most of us would put that high on the list. But they were thinking more specifically about the growth of the church. And so all the things we've been talking about as far as like strategic planning are things like outreach and building community within the church. So whether or not everyone in the church has identified it, I still think that we will be inviting. I think we will be, inviting everyone to be involved somehow and working to engage people. So I don't know yet how that's going to play out. I don't. That's for us to process, and how we get more. On the other hand, it's a fair, it's, I don't know, maybe 150 members or something like that, maybe 200. And people are on multiple committees. The people that are on our environmental justice committee are very active in other parts of the church. I think they have a lot of influence. I think we all do. And I think that the values, though, the Unitarian, it is consistent with the Unitarian Universalist basic principles. Like we have a banner that says something about like the interconnectedness of all being. That's one of our core principles. So, it is truly already built into the principles of the Unitarian Universalist. How much that's present to each member of the congregation, I'm not sure.
Thank you. So that's uua.org/green sanctuary 2030 program people can reference, and also Green Faith International, of which this circle is registered with. That is a multi-faith international movement trying to help individual congregations to catalyze similar kinds of things. So at this point, I've got folks on gallery view again, and I want to kind of start to open it up to allow other people to respond. But go ahead, Nan. Yeah.
Oh, but yes, I did want to share that. I don't forget there was that other resource I want to share.
Go for it.
Okay. So the other thing that as we move into, I don't know if any of you are engaged with or emergent strategies. Yes. Okay. So I just wanted to share that actually it was in my few interactions with this Green Sanctuary program that I saw quotes from, why can't I say her name right now? Emergent Strategies is, do you remember her name, Jessica, the name of the author of that?
Jessica,
Anyway.
You're muted. I think you're trying to tell us something. Here you go.
Mary Brown. I was just going to get the.
Oh, you got the book. Yeah, there it is. And what was her first name?
Adrienne
Marie Brown.
Excellent.
I'm still reading the book while I've been listening to it on tape. However, I would just a couple of quotes from that book shaped, when I say that I like reached out to my minister, it came out of a quote from that book that was shared in a meeting that I had attended. It's just lovely, lovely work about,
and just to, while you're finding that, just to say again, it's Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Brown, right?
Adrienne Marie Brown. However, she is in an institute, which I'm just putting in the chat right now, esii.org. So she's recognizing, okay, it's about approaches to organizing that are about building deep relationships and about honoring our own well-being, as we're doing it. And much more than that, it's about, and it's about things like fractals, a fractal understanding that that perhaps if you do something on a small scale, that it can scale up instead of always thinking that we have to do something on an enormous scale to start out with, and to, so I'm just starting the book, so Jessica may be able to report better than me. However, I just wanted to share that it's lovely work that I'm using to guide me.
So esii.org, the Emergent Strategy Ideation Institute, right?
Yeah, they have podcasts, they have books, they have trainings, and yeah, so I just suggest investigating that if you haven't already.
Great, thank you. Now, shall we open it up? Okay.
Yes.
So, folks, thoughts, questions about Nan's process or how this is striking you? Yeah,
I'm
Judith.
really glad you're doing this work. Thanks for sharing about what's been accomplished so far. In addition to my work with Circle Sanctuary, over the years, I've been doing what you might call riding the Unitarian Universalist circuit. I've been a guest minister in a number of communities and congregations across the USA, and have been at General Assembly several times. Sometimes I'm brought in as somebody connected with paganism and nature spirituality because a congregation really wants to have a sermon and a service that's more focused on green themes. So it's some things I thought I would just share with you to find out what discussions or what you've encountered so far. Certainly in addition to having actual Sunday services with some type of environmental theme, climate justice theme, having the story for all ages, which is part of liturgy in a number of Sunday services for Unitarian Universalist congregations, churches, and fellowships. You know, every UU community has its own characteristics, but one of the things that I've endeavored to do is compile a list of some stories to be able to share whenever I have the opportunity to do that as part of one of my experiences in person or online or both, which it's been in more recent years. Sometimes I make up the story and will actually bring a image of the planet. I have something called a Hug a Planet from 1990 Earth Day time. And the young people each get a chance to hold the planet and share, you know, some things. So I think there's the Sunday service, there's youth education, and then you mentioned some things about music and art. And I know in some fellowship halls and sanctuaries, I have seen beautiful tapestries depicting the sixth source and or the seventh principle, the interconnectedness of all things, and the sixth source having to do with nature's rhythms. And then, of course, there is the how do we heat our building? You know, how green are we with all of that? I remember a number of years ago, I went to my first Unitarian Universalist congregation to do a service where there was plug-in for electric cars there. It was one of the first churches. This was north of Milwaukee. So I'm wondering if any of these things have been part of discussions or practices at the congregation you are helping to green more fully.
Wow, that's well, thank you so much for all of your descriptions of the resources and ideas that you've been implementing and know about. Actually, out of that initial service that I had, one of the participants, she's on the worship committee, so she did plan another service where she focused it on this, you know, caring for the earth and environmental justice, and it was so lovely. I told her afterwards, I feel so supported. I would love to get the list of books from you that you mentioned, stories. But I think that there's, let's see, what was your question exactly? Our church doesn't have as much of a focus on like earth-based worship, you know, as some UU congregations do. Like, we don't normally have any, like you have the full moon service or something like, or circle. Like I haven't seen that, but it's actually an interesting idea of a direction to go in as another way for us to engage. That's not just about sort of talking and doing sort of actions, but helping us to connect. I like that. And
Yeah, you got a lot of room for growth there too, because just a reminder, she did the presentation mid-September. It's been October, November, December, we're in early January. And within that short time, you've gone from a presentation to figuring out how to do meetings, planning meetings, to now integrating some kind of worship, to engaging an entire structured program, Green Sanctuaries 2030. That's a lot of movement I'm speaking as a former pastor. It's a lot of movement in a short amount of time. So if you were to do that much movement every quarter, it'd be fun to check in with you from a year from now to see the full-blown programs that are developing. I mean, it's a good start. I want to acknowledge that Judith had something to say, and then Jessica had something to say after her.
And I can follow up on that, Shar. Just doing the organizing I've been doing with Circle Sanctuary, it's not an easy thing. So Nan, wow, you're doing a great job. Keep it up. And I was reminded when Selena introduced herself at the beginning that as a teenager, I was involved in the very first Earth Day in 1970 as well. And so, if we look back on all these years later, it really it's a continuously changing process. And we just need to keep going and building on what we've got. And the way I come at it is that every little thing I do matters. It's like even the people I run into at the grocery store, if there's something I can talk about recycling, or if there's any way that I can build it into the services that I give to the Navy recruits, which I do a lot, is really easy, because it's like, we're nature spirituality. That's what we do. We honor our Mother Earth. And so I always keep coming back to the fact that we are all connected, and the air we breathe is connected with the trees, and we need to be responsible. And so I'm really honored to be speaking with these young people, because they're all between like 18 and 24 for the most part, to get them, because I really believe that the younger generation is our greatest hope. They are getting way more information than we ever got when I was a teenager at Earth Day. I mean, it was a good start, but it was just that. It was just a start. So yes, I definitely echo what Shar said, that Nan, you've come a long way, baby, and you're doing great. Check.
Yeah, Jessica, you wanted to add.
Yeah, thanks so much for a great conversation. It's just so inspiring. And I was particularly struck by something you said, Nan, at the very beginning of the conversation, when you talked about your background work as an educator, and you were implementing, I believe you said, decolonial or anti-colonial practices. And that's starting to inform your work, you said, in social justice. And so I was wondering if you could expand on that a little bit, maybe your thoughts about that, that worldview or that work incorporating into your engagement with the congregation, for example, or the environmental justice work that you're doing.
Ooh, yeah.
I know you're at the beginning of it, but
I mean, and I'm very, very humble right now. This pedagogical education framework, liberatory education framework, is something that others designed in my school. And I'm a student of it. I'm reading books that I never read before about, because I think when I came through education school, we talked about multicultural education, and we talked about, equity, but we didn't have as deep, and we're deeply analyzing like how the whole system of education is, founded on white supremacy, and all of these intersections of oppression. And one thing that I have reflected on, I'm very humbled, because as a white person, I was not aware. as I came up. I was not educated and I was unaware, and I'm becoming aware, right? And and so, but however, I've also been aware of other things that I was very critical about that government was doing or institutions were doing. So it's interesting to me. I have made this connection in my mind between how there's these corporations and system of capitalism and that wants to, that it does not care about our well-being. And now with my consciousness of like my privilege, I'm realizing that all these other people have been suffering under this system for a really long time, that, you know, which I didn't feel that suffering growing up, that suffering, you know. And so you know, of course there's other things like you know, anyway, like feminism and all of that. But and so with my congregation, I am now more open to learning about racism and exploring that. And so the activism, you know, I think I used to feel overwhelmed by activism, like, well, which one should I pick? You know, how could I do it all? And I think it's feeling more connected now. And like, for, you know, I'm planning to go to our church is very involved with like the Martin Luther King events here in our region. So I'm going to be doing that on Monday. And it's, I want to engage with other people in my congregation about processing this as a white person, like, you know, what I'm realizing and what I'm confronting and how I feel about it. And yeah, so I don't know if I really answered your question, but these are the things that are swirling around in my brain.
Thank you for that. Yeah, our social location, always figuring out and looking at it realistically. And if we come from a race that was a colonizer, we don't have to be colonizers, but we have to understand what that is and the dynamics and learn how to be allies and all that kind of good stuff. I'm speaking out of my own experience and not saying what anyone else has to do, but that's what I'm in the process of trying to do. Dennis, did you have something you wanted to add or ask?
No, nothing to ask about specifically. I just wanted to say I really appreciated your description of your emerging organizing work, and I wish you the very best in all that you're doing. And it will be interesting to see what you've accomplished in a year. So maybe you can come back and let us know about that.
Yeah, you can also be a member of Circle Sanctuary too, and then you can, you know, be part of cross-pollinating. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I just want to tell you how kind it is, how I really appreciate all of your support. You know, you're making me appreciate more what we've done. I think that my mind tends to diminish or, yeah, which is not helpful really. So it's very helpful of you to help me to appreciate it.
George, Jennifer, do you folks have something you want to add? I see you listening so courteously.
It sounds like an amazing journey that you're on, and I'm sure that you're going to be a great inspiration to many others as you go through this journey. That's awesome.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Okay.
Agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's a very, very difficult process, and one that all of us talk about every month in one way or another. Green Faith is focused on it internationally. Denominations are focusing on how do we get our faith communities, our local faith communities, anyone we're involved with, to move from talking about the issues to deeply talking about our own location of vulnerability with regard to the issues, and then moving into action. moving into action. That's not an easy process, but it kind of goes from education to organizing, doesn't it? Become grassroots organizers. So any last thoughts about that from anybody who's good at grassroots organizing? I'm learning.
Shar, you're doing a great job. Thank you for this.
And I appreciate you sharing from your experience as you have begun this. There's people at different stages, and I do think part of my takeaway from this is having that calling and then beginning to reach out and collaborate within community and to start a momentum. One of the things I really appreciate about the Unitarian Universalists that I've connected with, there does seem to be a real understanding about inclusion and connection and service and social justice as real foundational values and practices. And I know that within the larger UU world, the nature-based, earth-centered, and or pagan dimensions of UUA, the Covenant of Unitarian Universalists, pagans, has been one of those resources for helping to green congregations within not only the UUA, but it actually has had ripple effects out in the interfaith world as people from different faith traditions and denominations of different traditions come together. So thank you so much for being part of our Green Faith Circle and sharing your process and the successes so far. I do think you're inspiring not only those listening now, but those who may be processing in the future about, well, can I really make a difference? Well, you're living proof that by acting on a calling and drawing on some education, you can start more momentum. And I really think that's part of the key to mitigating climate change and bringing about eco-justice. So many thanks for being part of our Green Faith networking.
Thank you. Yeah, building resilient community. Well, we're kind of coming up to time. So before we go to closing, I'd like to invite each of us to have the opportunity to, given what you've heard here today, to maybe offer some thought to our audience who might be listening or viewing about why should we have any kind of hope at all? Why should we feel empowered or hopeful at all living in these times? It's an exciting time. We're in 2024. It's going to be quite an exciting year. How should we have hope and empowerment this year? Anybody who wants to jump on that one? Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, well, I'll just reflect what I heard today and what I'm hearing other places and the alignment between all these different places and conversations that I've been in. You mentioned, the darkness, the corporations, for example, that are counting on people feeling disconnected, feeling separate, feeling the severance from each other and from nature. But what I'm hearing that works, that you're doing, is the importance of building community, deep, meaningful relationships with each other, with the earth, within nature. And that's really central to action, breaking bread together, having meals together. That's really critical component to community organizing too, is that deep, meaningful connection and that sense of building a sense of belonging with each other and within nature that then creates health. It creates planetary health. So thanks for showing a pathway to that.
Lovely. Anybody else?
Well, I was going to say, there's so much fear mongering going on out there that I just refuse to accept it. I definitely plan to, put my light out into the world as much as I possibly can, because I have faith that we will get through this slightly dark time, this definitely difficult year, and that we will definitely see things change for the better, especially as we finally get towards 2025.
Yeah. Yeah. Any final words from the George Whitney camp or from Dennis?
I would just add that I would recommend that we also disconnect from our devices and get out in nature and spend some time there too.
Like right after the Zoom. Yeah. George and Jennifer, you guys want to say anything? Oh, sorry, Celia.
I appreciate conversations, because when you have environment, climate mitigation, eco action as a topic, you start boosting the signal, not only amongst those you're having the conversation with, but the ripple effect. So that's part of what gives me hope. And I give thanks for podcasting and videos and connections face to face and in cyberspace and in inner space. So many thanks for our conversation today.
I know something I want to add, which is that it's enjoyable. It's enjoyable to do this. It's enjoyable to focus on on nature. It's enjoyable to connect with each other. It's enjoyable to create action, to envision and to take steps towards your vision. And it's and I think that's like what you were saying, Judith, about sort of you sort of focus on what you're doing, like that just having a day, doing our daily work together and each on our own, that if we can focus on that rather than trying to solve all of it all at once.
Beautifully said. I think that's a great place to stop our group conversation. And that concludes our Green Faith Circle discussion for this time. Thank you, everybody. It wraps up this installment of a Blue Marble podcast as well. I want to thank you so much for participating, to our Green Faith members. Thank you so much, Nan Foster, for sharing your story with us today and these great resources that people can use. We are going to check in with you again. Thank you to our audience for tuning in. And folks, if you value what you've learned here today, please share this information with others. You can now find recordings of these programs available for listening and download by going to the Circle Sanctuary website at www.circlesanctuary.org. Look under the Our Work tab, because you're going to find Green Faith YouTube recordings under Circle Green. And you'll find all the Blue Marble podcasts under the Circle Sanctuary Network podcasts tab, and with the links also to current and past podcasts under Circle Green as well. So until next time, this is Char Bear signing off. Thank you for all the good you do. Stay true and blue. And hey, I hope to see you in the green space.